My name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Today, we're just having a lot of honest conversations on this channel, to be honest. I want to talk about the pressure to be kinky, the pressure to be into BDSM, and that it is genuinely okay to say no if you don't want to do kinky stuff. This has been something that's I've noticed so much that's come up in so many questions I get, and just what's kind of going on in my own life, people I know, and stories I've kind of shared with like metamors in my life, their experiences. And I really think it's a problem that, again, we've been sort of ignoring in the kink community, in sort of our culture at large. And you know, my philosophy, again, is always that I want the most people to do the things that make them happy and the least number of people to do things that make them unhappy. And, you know, when I kind of see dialogue about this happen in the mainstream media, you know, and sort of the general discourse, right, the usual lines that you get are from vanilla people that aren't involved in the kink community, that sort of like have a little bit of a kink shamey quality to their statements, where, and also like sort of swerve dialogue, you know, anti-sex worker, anti-porn dialogue, where it's like, porn is ruining men's brains, and because of the porn industry, men think that they need to have rough, violent sex with women where they don't ask for permission first, and the kink is bad because it makes men think that they can choke women non-consensually. And it's like, we are blaming BDSM for a lot of things that we should probably be blaming bad porn production for. You know, I am by no means anti-sex work, anti-porn. Like, I am asexual, so like I don't really consume that, but I think it can be a healthy, good thing for relationships, for people, for discovering fantasies. But it really has to do with the way that it's framed and produced, right? And there's sort of the general like mainstream pornography and the stuff that you see kind of on the front pages of these websites, right, where it's like you don't see the consent, you don't, you know, see the actual background of it that you would see if you had a legitimate, you know, constructed BDSM scene. I don't want to deny the fact that, you know, I have people in my personal life, I have stories I've gotten from you all where you have told me that your partners have started to non-consensually choke you in the middle of otherwise vanilla sex because they literally saw it in a porno and were like, oh, I just thought you would like it. I just thought that you would think it was hot. Like, it's to some extent, certain aspects that are considered like kinky or part of the BDSM world have kind of, I don't know if this is the right term for it. I'm going to say it was appropriated, but feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on that language. It's been like appropriated from the BDSM world and kind of recontextualized in vanilla porn with like vanilla standards for consent and communication, which is not good. And so people just think, oh, you know, it's like kissing your partner during sex. It's like stroking their hair. It's like getting into a different sexual position. It's this very like, oh, we're just supposed to kind of go with the flow, kind of read the mood thing. You can't do that when you're choking somebody or pulling their hair, because people don't realize, because I think maybe their only context for this is like watching it in porn. You don't think about how traumatic it is in that scenario. You're not like, this is actually like having somebody's hand around your throat like that. The reason why that's so intense in BDSM, the reason why people like it, you know, besides sort of, you know, the graying out feeling of, you know, kind of the restriction to your brain, right? That feels very vulnerable because it is very vulnerable. You know, your neck, your stomach, certain areas of your body, like they're not as protected as other areas. And having somebody grab that intimately, especially in a scenario, and I am primarily talking about like heterosexual, more male dominant leaning, you know, at least assumed to be submissive female leaning relationships, because that's how most of the porn where this happens, right? Is it's like very aggressive, like rough, you know, alpha male, like takes submissive by the throat and like shows her what like a real man's like. That's sort of the context for it. And, you know, people don't think about how vulnerable it is. They don't think about the fact that that can be trauma inducing, that it could be bringing up traumatic memories for people. Like, there's a reason why we talk about all this in BDSM, right? Is things that seem kind of even mundane and normal to do during sexual activities, you know, can be things that bring up, you know, upsetting, triggering memories for people. And we have to be aware of that when we go into scenarios with people before we start doing them randomly in the middle of sex. And whether it be hair pulling, choking, any other things, sticking fingers in somebody's mouth, things that have sort of a more like dominant edge to them that you see in vanilla pornography, it's just become so, or spanking even, for example, I've seen that as well. It's become so normalized that it's almost like some people assume that it's part of a vanilla sexual repertoire when the safety of it, the consent necessary for it, is not. It is not. It is still, I have my old video that I did that's like types of BDSM play that people don't realize are dangerous. And hair pulling and choking are on there because they are so normalized by pornography, like mainstream vanilla pornography, that people don't even stop to realize that, like, if I pulled my girlfriend's hair in the wrong way, I could literally cause cervical spine damage. If I choke my girlfriend and she has an underlying medical condition, this could cause serious ramifications, and even just like simple things, right? Like, outside of trauma and like dramatic medical events, if you choke somebody, and depending on kind of how you're doing it and length of time and things, like, you could cause, bruising on their skin. You could give them something called petechia. And if they work in a job, if they have a family that's going to see that they can't necessarily cover up with makeup, right? That could cause professional and personal problems for them after you have sex. Like, do you think people want to go out and explain why is your face like covered in like small purple dots? Like, everything okay at home? Like, what's going on, sweetie? That's an awkward conversation at minimum, and could, depending again on life circumstances, that could cause the person quite a number of issues. And I think what is really sad about this is because, I know so many people that have had this sprung on them as though it is like an average thing that you just happen to do that people should just, I guess, be okay with. Like, I know a lot of people that are just completely scared off from BDSM because they think that is what BDSM looks like because of the way that it was introduced to them. And, I've even had my own situations where I've had, partners that I kind of had reestablished myself with that, I hadn't done like choking stuff with them before in like a long time. We hadn't talked about it again. I was under the impression that we were just kind of doing things, very, very plain, just to like kind of reintroduce ourselves to each other, and then suddenly the choking comes out and I'm like, whoa, what? We did not talk about this ahead of time, because also, important note here, consent is a non-going thing, right? Consent is an active thing. Just because you agreed to do something 5 years ago doesn't mean that you've agreed to it for now and forever. Just because you say yes once doesn't mean yes for forever. You have to have those conversations about what that consent means, right? Is it consent just for right now, this moment, today? Is this consent for, like, if we do this again in the future, will it be okay then? All of that matters. Bandit is on my lap now. She would like to tell you that consent is very important. And it is. And I could talk about consent for forever. But what I do want to talk about and focus on is that it is okay to not be kinky and to not feel pressured to say yes to kink when you don't want to. And because I know so many people that have been pressured to say it, again, they are scared off from BDSM because they think that all BDSM looks like your boyfriend randomly starting to choke you during sex until you have a panic attack. And that is not a good introduction to BDSM and does not represent our community well. And I know a lot of people that feel pressured to say yes to kink relationships of various kinds, right? I get, the stories of this that are like, my girlfriend really, really like needs me to be a submissive. And if I can't be a dominant towards her, like, the relationship is going to be over. So please teach me how I can learn to be a dominant because I'm terrified of losing this relationship. Or people that feel pressured again to accept sort of these more mundane kinky activities during sex when that's not comfortable for them. Or people that are switches that aren't satisfied in their relationships because, they're kind of always forced to play the dominant role, but their submissive side goes unfed, right? So they have to just be dominant and not express the other sides of their kinky desires. So maybe they're just submissive, but their partner's also submissive. So then they have to force themselves to be dominant when they're not. And like, people kind of feel pressured to say yes to all these different circumstances. And, I just want to affirm for people, maybe if you haven't heard it in your life from somebody else, somebody you trust, it doesn't make you a bad person to be vanilla or not be kinky in a particular direction. It is okay to have limits and boundaries, and it is okay if that boundary is doing any kind of BDSM whatsoever. I think so much of kink has really been mainstreamed in a lot of ways, and it seems so normal to so many people that we estimate that so much more of the population is really kinky than it truly is, right? Some people might be okay kind of trying things, sort of just once in the bedroom, having a little bit of a taste, but not really going any farther than that. The BDSM world is still niche. It is still, something that not everybody does. And it's intense, it's emotional, it can be physical, it can be mental, it can be so many things. And not everybody wants that, and everybody's equipped for that. Not everybody wants it in the same way for the same reasons. And if you don't want that, it's fine. When I made the fake dom video, I didn't really talk about this, but I meant to. There will be people that will guilt you for not being kinky enough. They will say that you are boring. They will call you vanilla in a derogatory way. They will call you any number of bad names, insinuate that your, sexual performance isn't adequate or whatever else, simply because you have reasonable expectations for the types of relationships that you want to have. Now, I do encourage people, if they want to explore kink. Again, consent is an ongoing thing. If you just want to try spanking once, you don't have to agree to do it forever, right? If you decide, okay, this really actually isn't for me, I'm glad I had the experience to tell me so, that's great. You had information to have better relationships and know what you want to have going forward. Not the same thing as somebody being like, listen, if you don't let me spank you, you are literally so boring, I'm going to have to break up with you because it's just, oh my God, how are you not into this? Everybody is into this. I am not for that. I am not for guilting and shaming people into doing kinky things. That's not how we build a good community. That is not how we have good relationships. And something that's really been in my mind, on my heart kind of recently for the past year or so is not doing things purely for other people and choosing to do things that hurt us instead of serve us. And I think this is one of those things. I think oftentimes, if you're sort of socialized as female, if that's kind of part of your experience, like, you know that you are sort of expected to accept certain things. You are expected to go along with certain things, and like being a good partner looks like I have to make my partner happy. And the way that I make my partner happy is maybe agreeing to do things that don't actually serve me and in fact might actually hurt me. You don't have to do that. Just by the way, and I'm saying this, I'm saying it a little bit in a kind of a funny way to sort of diffuse things a bit, but genuinely, it took me like literally until this year, until my mid-20s, to really kind of figure out, oh, I actually like don't have to do this though. Like, it is genuinely okay if I say no to things, and you are entitled to have a relationship that respects your boundaries and respects your needs. You are not necessarily guaranteed to have a relationship with a particular person that looks a particular way, but in general, you are allowed to have relationships where your needs and wants and desires matter. And having that just be fine, and having that be okay. It's okay to say no. And you are allowed to say no to big things, not just, no, I don't want to have dinner at that place. No, I don't want sushi. Like, you are allowed to say no to big things. Of course, your partner can make decisions with that information. If they need to have BDSM and you don't want to do that for them because it would hurt you to do so, they might choose to have another relationship. And this is, I think, really something I want to emphasize, maybe even in its own video, because it's so important to me. The people in the relationship are more important than the relationship itself, right? The concept of the relationship, capital letters, is considered so sacred, so holy to so many people that they're willing to put themselves through endless amounts of suffering to just preserve the fact they have a relationship. That is not what makes you a whole person. That is not what makes your life worth living. You make your life worth living. You are good enough on your own. You don't need the relationship. And you especially don't need a relationship that makes you feel like shit because you don't want to do kinky things. That makes you feel like a bad person because you can't live up to their sexual expectations. Like, fuck that. Fuck that. Fuck that. That's all I'm going to say. Just fuck it. You deserve better than that. And, people who are kinky should find partners that are also kinky. People who are not kinky should not feel forced to do so. And I never want anybody to feel forced to choose kink, to feel forced to stay in a particular relationship. And I just hope that maybe this video kind of reaffirmed some things for some people, because I know I've gotten so many people that ask me like, hey, is it okay that this thing happened without my permission? Should I have just expected it because, you know, everybody needs to be kinky these days? They don't. Definitely not everybody is kinky. Forcing kink on somebody without their consent is bad. Do not do that. And if you just want to be vanilla, that's fine. I do not think lesser of anybody that's vanilla. I have had and will continue to have vanilla partners in my life because I don't need BDSM to be happy with every single person that I'm ever involved with. And that's perfectly okay with me. And I think that we just need to not shame people and guilt people into doing things to please ourselves. I think if anything, people could really stand to learn how to be less selfish with their sex, with getting their sexual needs met. Of course, you know, having your sexual needs met is the goal. I would want anybody to be able to do that. But guilt and shame are not the tools to get there. And I just want to, you know, give people the strength to feel okay saying no and to feel, you know, empowered from somebody that's kinky. Just, hey, you don't have to be like me. It's fine. You don't have to be kinky, and you don't have to want your sex to be kinky. You could be the kinkiest person in the whole world, right? You could do bondage every single day. That doesn't necessarily mean that your sex is kinky or the way that you do kink is sexual. That's also totally fine as well. Doing non-sexual kink in general, also perfectly fine. Totally, totally fine. And if anybody tries to make you feel bad about that, fuck them, basically. And I think that's enough of a rant for now. Hopefully this kind of helped somebody listening feel better. Hopefully this helped somebody feel empowered. I just feel like so many of the conversations we've been having have been stories of abuse and power and pressure and coercion, and I really want to do as much as I can to have these conversations so people know that they don't have to be subjected to that coercion, that it is okay to stick up for your boundaries no matter how you were socialized. It does not make you a bitch or mean or rude to say, no, I don't want to do that. Stick up for yourself. Be your own best self-advocate, and that will help keep you safe, whether you're vanilla or you're kinky. So that's everything for today, guys. I would love to hear your comments, thoughts, questions, anything else, stories down below. Put it down in the comment section. And if you haven't already, if you like this conversation, please do subscribe. I make videos twice a week about all sorts of kink and BDSM related subjects. And finally, if you really enjoyed this video, if you want to support what I do, the best way you can do that is through Patreon. A link to that is down in the description box below. We are currently making our way towards 1,000 patrons. So if you want to help us reach that goal, again, please check it out. If you already support me over there, thank you so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you guys next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.